Hello and welcome to the Yeti Den. I am joined as always by my good friend Jumby Jumbwa, otherwise known as Matt Gorgas, and we hail from Southern California. It's a pretty good weather we've been having as of late. As you can see, Layla's just vibing back there behind me.
Yes.
But yeah, so a great week for gaming. What were you up to this week as far as your gaming goes? Are you still working your way through Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, or what's on your docket?
Dude, honestly, I got really distracted with Return to Moria. I can't believe how much of this game I'm playing and how much I like it. I've been playing a solo file and then also playing with my friend Philip. Oh my gosh, it's been such a good time and I can't get off it. When I'm not when I'm not playing Return to Moria right now, I am currently just watching Netflix right now. So yeah, nice. I want to get back to Final Fantasy for sure and beat it. But the more I play Return to Moria, the more happy I am that there is actually a Lord of the Rings game that I like now. And so I've been really sinking my teeth into it and almost beating that right now. But have you been playing any games this week too, Spencer?
Yeah, this week we were talking before we recorded. It's been a really busy week for me with podcasting and content and all that. But I played a little bit of Dragon's Dogma just to still chip away at my playthrough of that. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. Still playing Liza P. And then I've been trying out Bolt Gun on the harder difficulty. Now that's on Game Pass. And some people have actually been finding the Bolt Gun video, which is really cool. So we'll talk a little bit about what the Yeti Den community is saying about Bolt Gun and Quake 2. And I'm really excited that these types of games seem to be capturing people's imagination, like the dark, gloomy first-person shooter. So I think that's exciting to me because I love all things weird and gothic and Lovecraftian. So yeah, we'll dive into our gameplay at the end. But our two main stories for today is we're kind of on the eve of the dragon, as in Dragon's Dogma 2 comes out. Is it like today in like a couple hours? At the time of recording right now, we're on March 20th. You sent me, Matt,
yes,
like a time zone thing.
Yeah, let me pull that up really quick. Yeah, I sent you, it was from IGN, some global release times. And on Steam, it looks like it's releasing earlier. It says Los Angeles 5 p.m. on March 21st. So it's the 20th right now. So that's tomorrow.
So tomorrow.
Yeah. And then on
Nice.
PS5
Yeah,
and
I'm still
Xbox, it says 9 p.m. tomorrow. So, and then adjusted for everyone else's time zone, right? Accordingly. So that is pretty exciting right there for a lot of fans.
Yeah. I'm going to wait like maybe a week just to see how people react to the Xbox port, because I think I'd prefer to play it on Xbox. I've heard that the PC port is pretty good. So we'll go into a little bit of Dragon's Dogma 2 news. And then also we're going to talk about a new scene that was released by Amazon about the Fallout show. So yeah, I want to cover the Fallout show on this podcast. And so we got our first little taste of exposure via the podcast to the Yeti Den audience. And so we have at least one comment that we can react to. Fallout, as I've said, that generates thoughts and opinions. So you do kind of get like the fan base discussing things, and sometimes I'll be like, interesting, I'm gonna wait and see what someone else says, and then other times I hop in. So we'll use that as a little bit of a conversation starter, but then we'll also touch on the new scene that they showed, and you were even telling me you have some new thoughts and new opinions that you're kind of developing. Yes. But first, let's hit the main story for now, and we'll just kind of prime you guys for Dragon's Dogma 2, a little bit of context. There was a cool interview with I believe he's the game director, Hideaki Itsuno. And so he said that he was talking to, I believe, or at least this is who reported it, VG247, but he was saying it's been a long time since the first game came out, and over the years, I think it's sold its way and made its way into many gamers' hearts. Hopefully, now that we're on the eve of releasing Dragon's Dogma 2, we can finally just say that it's a popular, well-selling series that lots of gamers love, rather than treating it as a cult concern. Maybe he meant cult classic, or I don't know, cult concern, but do you think of Dragon's Dogma as a cult classic? Like when it first came out, did you have friends that were playing this game, or is this something that you discovered more recently? When did you first buy Dragon's Dogma?
So the first time I actually started my first file on Dragon's Dogma, it's called Dark Arisen, right? I never beat it, but I think I played it back in, I want to say 2014, 2015, somewhere around there. And I had a good time with it, but it definitely did feel a little bit more of that cult classic sort of game. It didn't feel necessarily like a AAA release like the Assassin's Creed games at the time. I guess like Black Flag or something. And so I didn't necessarily have that hype with the game. I didn't discover it on release either. It was just kind of something that my brother was playing and said, hey, you like Lord of the Rings, you like JRPGs. Well, this is a Japanese game creator who made their own take on the Western medieval style of games and RPGs in the West. So maybe you should try it out. And I feel like I really enjoyed every time I started playing, but at the same time, there's something about that game. I always get distracted with other stuff. It doesn't pull me in so much. And I don't know what it is. And I don't know if the new game is going to fix that for me. I'm very curious though, because I really have been enjoying the character creator demo. I was texting you about it because I love building characters. So that's been really dragged me in. And it almost does feel like they're taking this game that was a cult classic and bringing it to that mainstream audience, that AAA stamp of approval. So I do have hopes up, but like you, I'm going to wait and not get it tomorrow. I'm going to wait and see how it looks to see if it adds a little bit more of that. I guess, I don't know. I really have to play it and see what I think about it. I want to like it so bad, Spencer. But I can't say I'm going to love it because I can't say I loved the first game at the moment right now. So yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
Are you feeling the same way, or what are you feeling about it?
Well, I think for me, when it came to Switch is when I first noticed it, and then I would see it on Steam, and I just always knew it was a beloved RPG with a really cool pawn system, and so I didn't start playing it for real until like the last couple months. And it is what I thought it was, and it isn't what I thought it was. So maybe when we get to the gameplay, I'll kind of talk about my theories as to why you've bounced off of it from like a game design. Because what I've been hearing is that they've kept a lot of those components. So like I think that it'll be interesting to see like how people react to it as a sequel, because in a lot of ways it really seems like they've retained a lot of the core game design that is a little bit more challenging than I think modern RPG players are used to. And he kind of explains this in the article. He says, I always really wanted to continue the series, but we had all these other plans, and it's not just me, of course, but it's about the rest of the development team's resources and availability. Those stars also have to align. So ultimately, it was about 5 years ago from now, around 2019, when all those things came together. That allowed me to finally get back in and get out the Dragon's Dogma mold. That meant that by the time the game was finished, here we are about 12 years after the last game. So it's a kept you waiting, huh, kind of situation, but we finally got to it. And then he continues, he says, thinking about the way the industry developed since Dragon's Dogma 1, I wish there had been two of me and two teams. Itsuno laughs, VG20, I believe they're called VG27. They said that, and then they said we could have had one of me work on Devil May Cry and the other one keep going on Dragon's Dogma straight away. It would have been a chance to be involved with that kind of games industry trend development in the early 2010s. And I just want to point out that like if you are a Devil May Cry fan, I know he's been involved in that franchise, so I think it's kind of like a Todd Howard situation where it's like you have this like creative mind who's torn between multiple franchises, so it ends up with that like delayed effect of a game, right? And then he continues, he says, it's now been 2 full generations since the PS3 and Xbox 360 that the original game launched on, and I kind of feel like it all worked out in the end for my concept for Dragon's Dogma. The hardware has finally caught up with what I wanted to achieve. As you mentioned, I could literally take my to-do list of things that I had to leave out or cut and start implementing them on the new game. So I've been really pleased. So that's another part of Dragon's Dogma that I'm really curious to find out more about. Is I've heard this sentiment about cut content from the original, and it does feel a little bit like that, but I'll save those thoughts for when we come back. But yeah, does that add any context for you about this has been 12 years and he's been bouncing between Devil May Cry? Like, have you played a Devil May Cry title before? Are you a Devil May Cry fan?
Yes, I've played the original, and I got as far as I could with that. It ended up being sort of challenging for me when I was younger playing that. But I love the aesthetic, love the vibe, and I played that first level so many times. And then I also purchased the newest one. I think it's 5. I think it's Devil May Cry 5. But I played that one, and I got decent, like at least halfway through that one. Again, I'm not like the biggest fan of those of the Devil May Cry series. So when something else that I was more interested in came out, I ended up switching over to that game. That's why I haven't gone back and even beaten those games yet. But they're very cool. I like them. But what you were saying in regards to Dragon's Dogma, it's got me thinking like, okay, there's going to be a lot of the same mechanics that were in the old game, and maybe even the same vibe with, like, I was even seeing some other people review the game, and they were telling me like a lot of the juicy bits of this game is in this side quests and the world building through the side quests. And if I walk into the game thinking that way, I think it might all just be like how I'm attacking this game. What am I expecting to get out of this game? And so if I go in thinking like, okay, I just want to make a character and start doing side quests and leveling up my guy, and really just having fun with the combat gameplay, I might enjoy it a little bit more than when I was playing Dark Arisen. It has such an epic opening for the Arisen, getting killed by the dragon and becoming the Arisen. I felt that was so awesome. And then all of a sudden, the story went really flat because the game opens up and they want you to explore the world, talk to people, and learn about the game by being in it, right? And so I feel like maybe that's what kind of maybe not so much more interested in the game anymore is that I got this like high stakes experience of in the beginning of this heavy story, then all of a sudden like nothing. Now I'm like picking fruit and picking up, little items that I don't even know what they're going to be used for, and I just got to kind of hold on and keep playing, and then maybe wait out for a payoff later with the story again. So I don't know. I'm gonna maybe try to experience and watch more gameplay and in the next coming week, and try to envision myself if I go in with that sort of kind of understanding of what this game is it going to be the right game for me to play? Because I know that like it's going to be really good for a lot of people who are already true fans of the gameplay loop. So we shall see. We shall see.
I love that. Well, let's go ahead and move on to Fallout, because we will talk more about Dragon's Dogma later when I kind of break down my gameplay thoughts and whatnot. And I think that'll naturally kind of lead into what we think is going to happen with Dragon's Dogma 2. But for Fallout, so there's a new first scene. I also grabbed a couple more quotes from Jonathan Nolan. He's one of the series producers. He said, quote, "I think you have to come into this trying to make the show that you want to make and trusting that as fans of the game ourselves, we would find the piece that were essential to us and try to do the best version." In that same article with T3, they said, Nolan said, "It started for me with Fallout 3, which devoured about a year of my life. I was an inspiring young writer at that point, and it almost derailed my entire career. It's so ludicrously playable and fun. Seriously, the games were just incredible." And then there's another quote from Games Radar, which says, again with Nolan. So he says, "Each of the Fallout games is a discrete story, different city, distinct protagonists within the same mythology. Our series sits in relation to the games as the games sit in relation to each other. It's almost like we're Fallout 5. It's almost like we're Fallout 5. I don't want to sound presumptuous, but it's just a non-interactive version of it, right?" So I wanted to kind of unpack some of those new quotes with the scene that we got recently from Amazon. I want to say it came out like yesterday or the day before. But this notion that this is coming from a Fallout 3 fan. And then, so Nolan views himself as a Fallout 3 fan. Last episode, we kind of talked about how, to me, there's so many visual cues to Fallout 4, where it's like, if you left off on Fallout 3 and then you saw this, it's almost like you're missing a chunk of like the visual identity. And then I've even seen a couple fans kind of mention like, oh, okay, the Pioneer Town in the scene that we get is very like Fallout New Vegas inspired. So I guess maybe let's just unpack a couple of these phrases that Nolan said. So what are your thoughts of like, if you're going to make a show with a lot of fandom, as long as you yourself are a fan, like you shouldn't worry too much about what the fans are going to say. Like, is that the approach you would take, or that you would want to take with if someone took like the IP of Lord of the Rings or something that you're really passionate about, and they're like, we're not so concerned about what the fans are going to say because we can't please them, but we are fans and we're just going to trust that. Like, has that proven to be a successful sentiment in other franchises? What's your take on that?
I would say so for Peter Jackson and the Lord of the Rings. I would say that rings true. For other franchises, like even Lord of the Rings after Peter Jackson, maybe not so much. I think it's silly not to at least pay attention to what the fan base is saying and consider it. I think it's more wise to not just like listen and do whatever the fan says, but take counsel and kind of test and put yourself and your fandom against their fandom, and why is it different and why is it the same, and how can we like translate what we love about the game into cinema best. So Yeah, that's how I kind of look at to answer that question.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's kind of how I view it too, is like the fan base is the council, and um the lore was such a massive franchise. It's almost like the fans are the keepers of the lore. And a great example of that is on Nerds of the Ring for YouTube. They just put out an interview not too long ago with one of the original filmmakers from the series, who's now producing the War of the Rohirrim. And like, you see the mutual respect of like the keepers of the lore on YouTube who are day to day in it, and then those who step out with these large budget projects. And like, the more synergy that there is between those two communities, I think the better. And I feel like if you read the comments on that, everyone's super positive, and you could tell that they have a lot of mutual respect from the fan base to the like heritage of the Jackson team, but also the fact that they're taking a new kind of approach with War of the Rohirrim. So it's like, you could kind of get best of both worlds if you're like, if the fan base feels like they're with you. And later we'll mention two other shows that have fan bases, that have news. But I think that fans are open to reinvention. They're open to a different style, as long as they feel like the person in the room is also a keeper of the lore. And if there's no one that is keeping the lore, then I think it's going to be a little bit more antagonistic. And I'm not saying that Nolan and the team are approaching that way. I just think it's something that fans are they're going to naturally have some hesitation when they hear that, like, Nolan is kind of taking this perspective that a filmmaker has to trust their own vision and can't rely on the fans to guide them too hard. And I think there are times where that works out really well. Like, I would say with Andor, it works in that it feels like it's what fans want, but it's maybe not something we would have imagined ourselves. And so there's that fresh creative inspiration while still respecting the lore. So the other stuff that I thought was interesting was maybe like the concept of a discrete story, a different city, and a distinct protagonist. So within the same mythology. So for me, the only line that kind of makes me, as a Fallout fan, a little nervous is I know that for you said that Fallout 4's emotional arc of the mother and son or father and son, and then even with the reverse in Fallout 3, that works really well for you. And that did work for me too on the first time I was introduced to Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. But once I played Fallout New Vegas and the Outer Worlds, I was like, oh man, when you expose me to the Obsidian RPG approach of there isn't necessarily a set protagonist arc as much, it really feels like you're going to make your own protagonist. There isn't a distinct protagonist. You'll come up with that. That's one thing that I think is going to be interesting. Like, how will we feel seeing someone else be that distinct protagonist? Because we all could play as totally different characters. And I think we touched on this a little bit last time. Like, is it going to be kind of Game of Thrones, where you have different factions that you care about and you pick the faction that kind of represents how you would role play? So maybe let's use that to kind of talk about the way that the protagonist is portrayed in the scene. So if you guys haven't seen the scene yet, essentially you get a ghoul who is very much a main character, and you have the Vault Dweller. And the Vault Dweller kind of comes across as very naive, very quirky, very kind of Southern charm, innocent.
Low charisma.
Low charisma. Yeah, exactly. That's what a lot of the comments are saying. Like, so there's kind of a war going on between, not a war, but over exaggeration, but two minds saying she should have low charisma because she's a Vault Dweller. And then the others just saying like that's kind of the sentiment, like that, but is that the best way to tell the story? Like, is that going to be interesting? And I would say with most storytelling, it seems like you're creating an arc so you could have character growth. But yeah, what was your reaction now that you've had a longer scene with the main character interacting with the ghoul? What's your thoughts on the Vault Dweller?
I mean, I gotta see more. I really think it could be either or. I feel like I'm on a teeter totter. One way it could be super cheesy. I could see it going that route. Or like some Star Wars stuff I've seen. Some of the new TV shows just seem super cheesy to me. But then like they have really cool moments. And that's where I could see what I could see happening to this one, like where it could be somewhat cheesy, but then forgivable, and then you like it, but then the cheese comes back again. Or it could just be, again, like this is just a weird scene out of context, and it's actually going to be a lot easier and more fun to watch, like Last of Us with HBO. So yeah, I gotta see more. I really did like the ghoul character the most. And yeah, but we're just talking about the protagonist right now. We can go with the other characters after. But did you get did you feel the same way with her lack of charisma? You know?
Yeah, it's the we mentioned this last time, and it's still with more time with the character. Again, I can't help but compare this character to Silo, the Rebecca Ferguson's character in Silo, where there is a similar not understanding what the grand conspiracy is, kind of being new to it. Same with Severance, and they could have gone a little darker, I think, with her, a little bit more skepticism. But I do think if the humor lands and we find the satirical tone of this very kind of someone who's kind of had the wool pulled over their eyes, like if that's funny as a storytelling device, but it also enriches the characters' inner motivations, then I think that's awesome. I will say that like it's very close to feeling like a Fallout that I would expect to see on screen. Like there are so many elements of it that feel really detailed and rich, and then at other times it feels a little broad, where maybe it's still missing some of that tone. And I think the problem is that there's so many Fallout games and so many minds behind Fallout that it's like you kind of have to pick your perspective, and that's clearly what I think Nolan is referring to when he says like he can't rely on the fans. He has to come in with the perspective. It's kind of like he said, he's making his Fallout 5. So if he wants his Fallout 5 to be a little lighter, and maybe it does get darker, but I would just be curious, like, why go comedic and light? And so let's use that to tap into something, because again, you mentioned on the last episode quirky, and someone said, no, in our comments, they're like, no, it shouldn't be quirky, it should be dark. But then someone else responded that I thought was really interesting, and they said, Fallout 4, 3, and New Vegas are all very quirky. It's supposed to be a game. Yeah, the original computer Fallouts were very dark and grimy, but that isn't sellable. But if they build off of what most people know nowadays with the quirky Fallout, they can make a whole show about it. There are plenty of dark apocalypse shows. So I think I fall in line of kind of the guy who ridiculed us. Like, I'm kind of like, I would take the darker Fallout for sure. But at the same time, I think the commenter is right, where they're like, by now, though, like what Matt has played is all like quirky. You know, like it is very humorous. It's very silly. Yes, there's the green tinge in Fallout 3. In Fallout 4, there are dark themes. But like Fallout 4, they really said they wanted it to look bright and colorful. Like that was intentional. And even when you play Nuka World, it's sometimes off-putting for someone like me who's only played a little bit of the first Fallout, but loves hearing about the process of the development of this lore. Yeah. And like in Nuka World, sometimes there'll be people wearing like neon colored Converse that look very 2010s Coldplay. And you're like, that's not Fallout. Like, or like there'll be a bright spray painted, you know, AK-47 that looks like it could have been in like Fortnite. And you're like, that's not Fallout. Like there's a really fine line between 1950s satirical kind of like Twilight Zone pulp fiction style quirkiness, and then there's too modern, too it has to stay rooted in that like 50s feel, you know, it has to feel retro futuristic. So I think it's cool that we're having both sides of the discussion of like, should it be darker? Should it be quirkier? You know, and Bethesda, if you guys are watching this, I would love a darker Elder Scrolls. Like, let's go back to Morrowind. Like, I think what's cool about Starfield is it does feel dark, I think, but it doesn't feel like maybe magical enough. So if Elder Scrolls could bring back some of the magic and some of the darkness, I think that would be really cool. But I think there is a fear to go too dark that you lose a broader audience. So yeah, what are your updated thoughts? Hearing the discussion.
Yeah, I would probably say like I'm still here for the quirkiness if it comes out of the correct space, meaning like in the Fallout games and in that world, I feel like the silliness and the funniness comes out of witnessing the bizarreness, how bizarre the effects of the post-nuclear war are on all life forms, on towns, on social cues, on relationships, any social issue. Even it's just very bizarre how this world functions, and it makes the player laugh sometimes. So if they make the show respond in a similar, make the show tell the jokes in a similar way, or reveal these bizarre things and situations in a quirky way, I think that's okay, and that's going to make me laugh, and it's going to make me feel like I'm in the Fallout universe. But where I'm not okay with the quirkiness is just for the sake of landing a joke, right? It has to, for me, come from the setting, the world, the situation they're in, the conflict or whatever. Then make that weird, quirky joke so that I can also come alongside the character and be like, yeah, this is really weird. What's happening? Right. And but most of the time, I think it has to have that darkness so that you could make the viewer feel uncomfortable and then laugh. Right. So if we could get that going in the show, that's what I want to see. And I don't see anything in this trailer that's making me flat out say it's not going to be like that. But I don't get any other moments in the clip that's telling me for sure you're safe, enjoy this show. It's gonna be true to what you like. So that's my updated thoughts in regards to that clip. And then also considering what we talked about last week with the trailer.
Yeah, what were your thoughts on the new scene with the Brotherhood of Steel? So in the clip, a Brotherhood of Steel member kind of hops down from his like suit and essentially saves the Vault Dweller from the ghoul. How did that come across? Because that's another example of like when we're supposed to think that the suit looks awesome and he's a tough guy, and if we kind of feel like, ooh, I don't buy it, that we shouldn't be laughing at the Brotherhood of Steel. Yeah. Like it's kind of that Halo effect. Like you shouldn't laugh at Master Chief, right? So it's like we shouldn't laugh at the Brotherhood of Steel, and that's where it gets so hard. How do you have true dark themes juxtaposed with like a forced sense of humor? Because then when like there's that moment where it's like he's supposed to be cool, but then you're also supposed to be in on it. And I think a great example is Helldivers seems to nail that that juxtaposition of like, ooh, this is sick, and also, ooh, this is really funny. What did you think? What were your thoughts on when he came in and saved her, and the way the suit looked in the environment?
Right. I felt well, last week when I saw the suits, I was saying, man, they look so good. They look so cool. This is Fallout. This is what I this is the the Mickey Mouse of Fallout, right? The suit. And for some reason in that clip, I've got a little bit of that cheese that I got with the main protagonist as well. I felt like, yeah, the suit looked cool, but I didn't feel like the voice and the dialogue quite, and maybe even the entrance, like the movement, really felt like it was honoring the suit. It didn't feel like it was honoring the suit too much. It felt like it was still trying to keep this like, all right, now I'm here. What are we doing? You know, like a little bit of that. Maybe they're trying to have a little bit of that Western-esque style. But I don't know. I didn't
kind of
quite...
Buzz Lightyear energy.
Yeah, I didn't quite like it, and I didn't quite dislike it. I'm just like, I need to see more. What is happening right now? This feels out of context. The context, then I could either like it and see like, oh, that's why they went with that direction, or I can then confirm my suspicions, going, oh, this is just cringe, and they're forcing characters to meet each other right now because they have to for the story, you know. So, what did you think about the suit, paired with the voice, paired with how he was approaching them? Did it all work together for you, or are you like me where you got to see more context?
Yeah, it kind of feels like yeah, you got like Woody and Buzz and, you know, like I don't remember the other character's name in Toy Story, but it feels very hodgepodgey when you put the three of them together in the same environment, and showing us that so early. It's kind of like, it's a little bit like the loose change in your pocket, and it's like you got a penny, you got a quarter, you got a dime. It's like, it feels a little bit like maybe these characters should have lived their experiences longer and spent their own time with the audience before they met, so there would be more interest when they met. It kind of reminds me of Nick Valentine, how you meet Nick Valentine early, and I like Nick Valentine. I thought he was cool, and I think that works in a game, but I think in a show, maybe keeping some of those factions separate a little bit longer makes you more excited to see the moment that they meet. And so, yeah, I'll be curious to see, like, if we meet the Ghoul, like, do we meet the Ghoul and the Brotherhood of Steel member at the same time? Like, that seems a little bit like a lot, right? And so, yeah, tonally, it'll be interesting to see how that like pacing.
The Ghoul, sorry to cut you off, but the Ghoul, for me, if I was directing it, I would have made that situation between the protagonist and the Ghoul feel more high at stakes. Like, she's about to die. She doesn't have an idea of what she's up against right now. And then in a way that wasn't so obvious, kind of like boom, I'm Naruto, believe it, I'm here, brotherhood, right? I would have had him come in more ominous, like I'm like a power figure in this world, like an archangel flying down right now, and I'm actually the big dog, and I'm making that character, that Ghoul character, sweat a bit now. But then I want to see that Ghoul character overcome their fear and sweat in that moment, be like, no, I actually have killed some of you before. I know what to do. I'm going to use my head right now. All my life experience over 200 whatever plus years, right? So that's how I would have played that situation. The quirkiness and cheese, like, I don't know the context. I don't know where it's coming from right now. So it just makes me super skeptical.
Yeah, those are great points. I think I'm with you in how you described that, where, yeah, that could have been an action sequence, or that could have, yeah, almost like Warhammer, where, you know, and again, Helldivers, where it's like when they show their suits, there's that power and that darkness, whereas this feels like a little like, is this a joke? Are we supposed to laugh like when he shows up? Kind of like, is it RoboCop, you know?
I felt
or
like,
is it supposed to
I
be
felt like Superman was flying in for a second, like, I'm here to save you, you know?
Yeah, it's a little too like regal and not enough like, you know, oil and canisters and, you know, like pistons and like horror and like, you know, kind of like the big daddies in BioShock, you know, like it should have been a little dirtier and greasier. Like, is his suit too polished and clean for this world? Like, is it too shiny? But maybe that's their point. Maybe there's a storytelling device that's being used there. And then the other component was the Pioneer kind of town look. Was that giving you Fallout New Vegas vibes? Do you think that was, or in Fallout 4 and Fallout 3? I mean, there's Megaton, right? In Fallout 3, but this is the West Coast. This is in LA, right? So this is, you know, closer to New Vegas, I guess, than it would be to Fallout 3. What did you think of the Pioneer town with like the colonial looking people and stuff?
Right. I actually liked that. It did get that New Vegas feel. It felt more, I guess, nice or not as dusty. I felt things were a lot more clean, and maybe the suit gave me that lasting impression that everything's a lot more clean. I mean, she didn't look like she's been out there that long. This must be the first place she stumbles upon. She looked pretty clean, relatively clean. Everyone on set looked relatively put together and clean. I felt like the wood and the props, the set, that looked relatively clean. I would have liked a little bit more of a dirtier scene, a little bit more hard living. These guys look like they're doing okay. They're getting by. They're keeping things clean. But I think the setting is appropriate, but I would have just made things a little bit more dirty. So we'll see if they do.
Yeah, it kind of makes me wish that there was a Pedro Pascal or a Josh Brolin or a Javier Bardem, kind of like No Country for Old Men vibes.
Right.
Like where you feel dangerous in that West world, you know, kind of like Django Unchained, the Quentin Tarantino movie, where it's like, or even when I think about like Pulp Fiction or the Hollywood, I'm forgetting the full title, film from Quentin Tarantino, where you feel this sense of dread for your characters.
Or and I'm looking Max for that, does that too. Mad Max does that too. So
yeah, it's like it could benefit from a little bit more terror, a little bit more danger, because then we would be more at ease, and we'd be begging for the humor, right? Like we want that little smirk, you know, that says it's all going to be okay. But if they're not in danger enough, so when we were talking just a second ago, you were painting the town of this Pioneer thing, like painting the vibe of it. I remember, I'm forgetting the name of the town in New Vegas, but that first town you wake up in, I went to the bar, and this like gang member from another faction, he walks in and he tries to shake down the thing, and for some reason in that moment, in that like role play, I was just like, he's got to go. It's just like boom, like I didn't try to like solve it at all. I was like, you poor people shouldn't have to deal with this guy. I'll just deal with him right now. I'm not going to ask any questions. And I was thinking like that would work if you have the right chemistry, right? Like if you have a very serious actor like a Josh Brolin or a Javier Bardem, or a Brad Pitt, where like they kind of have this like grim sternness to them, and I think that's what the Ghoul is trying to have. But I feel like we need that from a human character, to show the stakes of surviving out there, and to show a little bit more vulnerability and a little bit more like just a human would naturally have to deal with the high stakes environment more, right? And so a ghoul being 200 years old and a Brotherhood of Steel member wearing a huge, you know, power armor suit, I'm still looking for that like old guard who's been in this world, who's kind of showing the new vault dweller here's how you're actually going to survive, because I think that's what we love about Westerns is it's like there's that, if you've seen Dune, it's kind of like how Chani shows Paul Atreides how to survive in her world. And it's like, she's like looking at him like, you have no idea what you just walked into. Yeah. And I feel like we need that from a human perspective to another human, someone, and maybe that will be the ghouls. I think there's a love interest, because I see like the ghoul had a daughter, and then there's a woman who looks like maybe she could be the mom. And so like maybe she's going to be that grizzled human resistance kind of person fighting the Brotherhood of Steel. Maybe she's going to be that leader for the Vault Dweller, the mentor figure.
Interesting part to me of the whole, like already there. I'm like, that sounds super interesting to me. I've always thought the ghouls were interesting. And I love the ghouls. Telling that story to also like emphasize the drastic changes that happened after the nuclear war in contrast to pre-war, that is super interesting. That is what also makes Fallout so cool in that lore, right? So I'm for sure there. I think we're all gonna enjoy his storyline, the ghoul, especially with all those flashbacks. That's cool. It's the other areas that we were talking about that don't sound as appealing and right away to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the scene. Watch the scene. Let us know what your guys' thoughts are. I'm excited to hear what you guys think of the new scene, but I want to move on to just a couple quick headlines that I saw today as I was preparing. One is Amy Hennig, I believe is her name, how to pronounce her name, but Amy is known for her work in the Uncharted series. She's a really beloved game director of Uncharted, and she unveiled her new game called Marvel 1943 Rise of Hydra, and it features Black Panther and Captain America. Now, it looks like it's a cinematic, but it's a really cool looking cinematic, and I think people are really curious, like, how much is this game going to actually look like this? Because this looks insane. Right. But did you get a chance to check out that trailer at all?
Yes, I did, and I thought the same thing. I thought this looks really good. If it was a movie, I'd watch it. I really like the World War II era anything. I think it has such high stakes, and I love that in any form of entertainment. And I think having these two protagonists, Black Panther and Captain America, is really interesting too. But yeah, we could talk more about the game, actual thoughts about what this game is going to be. But in regards to the trailer and what the story and the motivations behind it, I think it all fits. It's cool.
Yeah, and really, I don't think we'll know. But if it gives us anything close to what Uncharted did, then I'll be super happy. And you could just sometimes tell with the game's art direction. It's like, okay, like I'm looking at a still right now, and just how desaturated the blue is of the Captain America suit, and how they nailed kind of like the technology of the Black Panther suit, looking like futuristic but not too futuristic. The textures. So I think they are on to something. But yeah, we won't speculate because we'll wait for gameplay. But I think they've caught our attention, and they've caught a lot of the hype is there. Certainly, I don't think they definitely haven't missed with the trailer. Right?
Would you say
whatever the trailer was supposed to do, it did that.
Yes, I agree. It did it for me. What would you say, just based off the trailer and what you know about previous Marvel games, would you say this one has the most interesting story, I guess?
Totally. Yeah, I would say, like, because I love Spider-Man as a character, but the Spider-Man games haven't made me go, oh my gosh, I have to play that right now. This one though, just the allure of knowing Amy Hennig's like past, I'm like, ooh, if this feels like an Uncharted game, because I love the Tomb Raider games. Like if this has that same cinematic, fresh, big blockbuster story beats, where you care for the characters and every level is really interesting and the action gameplay is fun and the banter is fun. If they do that, then I think, this will be really exciting to play.
Right. I'm with you. With that. I agree.
What about staying with Marvel? Did you watch any of the trailer or read anything about X-Men 97? Like as a kid, did you watch the original series?
No, of course I've seen like an episode. And then also I might have seen all of the X-Men movies. I wouldn't consider myself a huge X-Men fan, but I think it's very cool. And I think Wolverine's a cool character. Are they still making that game, the Wolverine game?
Yeah. They are. They're definitely still making that game. Okay. Yeah.
I would definitely play that for sure.
For me, I love the original X-Men series. Like you, though, this was something I would watch after school, so I was never fully clued into the plot lines. I just loved the colors and the characters. Right. Cyclops, I thought was really... And all the action figures. So this is my favorite iteration of X-Men. So I'm definitely going to check out X-Men 97. I'm probably going to try and rewatch the original series just to catch up and refresh myself and watch it as an adult and kind of figure out what was going on. But I thought it was cool that they did that. I thought it would be really sick if they could do that with more of the 90s animated series that we watched. It kind of reminds me of the era of like Mighty Ducks and Gargoyles. Like that to me was so good.
Yes.
But what about, did you watch the Star Wars Acolyte trailer?
I did. I actually watched it twice. It's really interesting, that trailer, because I am a big Star Wars fan, but I'm not the biggest fan in terms of my friends Philip and Rick. They also watched all of the Ahsoka storylines, the Clone Wars, the animated shows. And so I think if you even watch the animated stuff for Star Wars, that I guess adds to the whole greater lore. You're truly, round of applause. You are the fan, right? But and I think that those people are really excited. I know my friends are very excited. They think it looks really good, and they're talking about all this what if, what is it, are they going to show this or this or that? For me though, like with ever since it came to Disney, the last couple of TV shows, I feel like it's gone super pop, super mainstream in a way. It makes me a little bit worried if, again, it's kind of like what we're speculating with Fallout is, are these characters, these actors, really fitting in with the world and telling a believable story? I don't know. I'm not getting that fully from the trailer. I'm getting a little bit of cheese from it. I don't know why, but to me, sometimes the costumes of the Jedi, or even just a lot of the costumes, they're starting to get a lot more crisp and they don't feel like they have depth. They actually do feel like Disneyland employees in a way, and I hate that. I don't want to feel like I'm at Disneyland watching the employees just act or something. I don't know, but I've always liked the idea of Acolyte going back in the past, the glory days of the Jedi, and then darkness creeps in again after like the 1,000 years of light or whatever. And that's a cool story and concept right there. It always has been cool. So I want it to do well. I want it to kind of bring me back into the Star Wars hype. But again, some of the actors, the casting just feels so much like they're just Disneyland employees. It's hard for my brain to get out of that for me. So we shall see upon delivery. What are your thoughts about this trailer? Did you get to watch it?
I mean, I think it's so hard to be Star Wars when Dune exists right now. It's like Dune is capturing the imagination, showing how to have gritty costumes, how to have adult themes, how to work in multi-generational actors, you know, like still take the big names, but like not over polish their faces to where it's like, oh, it looks like they just did a fresh, you know, skin glow up and they just put on all their makeup and they just like ironed their outfit and it's like fresh, like they're like carrying it to work in like a hanger with like stuff, you know, like sci-fi works if it's believable. And you want to see those like fabrics be really weighty and feel like there was a choice for that character to choose that specific outfit, and not that it's just like set dressing, but that it's core to the character and how the character interacts with the world. But I'm not the biggest Star Wars person, so I'm not. We'll have to wait and see. I'll probably wait and see if people like love it, like Andor, and then be like, okay, I'll check it out now. But if the fan base is a little cold on it, then maybe not. I do like Lee. Is it Lee Jung-jae from Squid Games, and I'm sure other projects that I've seen. I just can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, like I think he's a great actor, and that's like a great idea. But will he be able to transform into this character like he did in Squid Games? And will the world feel as lived in and raw and dangerous as Squid Games? So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the games that we've been playing. So you sent me some gameplay footage of you diving in. It looked like it was your home base. It was like you were showing me your base where you've been storing up for the night or something, collecting resources in return to Moria.
Yes. So my friend Philip and I have been making bases and storing up resources and crafting new weapons and armor and defending the bases from the hordes deep in the mines. And what I sent you was that showing off the base. It's super fun. Again, it feels just like Kingdom, the addicting feel of protecting your base, expanding it, going deeper into the game, and also enjoying a little bit of that combat thrill with it too. Do I have my complaints with the game? Sure. Like I am sometimes frustrated with the building mechanics. I think some other games do it a little bit better or more intuitive. And I think there's more flexibility with the building. Sometimes you don't fully understand the rules of where you can build and how many things can you build adjacent to that object you put down, right? Sometimes it won't let you, and then other times it will. So that can be kind of frustrating. And then also something that's really cool about the game, but also could be frustrating if you get lost, is the procedural generated map. So everyone's map is relatively the same, but it's also very different. Every game you play and start new, every room you go in is not going to be the same as the one you went in on your other playthrough. The map layout's going to be different. So trying to look up where something is hard. A lot of the people trying to help you online on YouTube, they're just saying, I'm going to tell you about like how this happens, how you get this thing, but I can't tell you where to go. But this is how it happens, right? So I've gotten a little frustrated with that, but overall, most of my time playing the game has been super fun because of that whole Kingdom-esque tower defense style of gameplay, but with the base in a mind, and then also exploring a new just getting deeper into Lord of the Rings lore inside of Moria. Seeing there's like little artifacts that the Fellowship left behind during their journey through Moria, so that's really cool to uncover, and some cool landmarks that we got to see in the movies or read in the books. That's been super rewarding and fun. I've actually gotten to the last boss on my solo file. It's pretty hard. I don't know if I'm going to do it on my own. I might just wait to finish the game with a friend. So that's kind of where I'm at with Return to Moria. And would I like a sequel? Actually, I think a sequel would be sick. I wonder if they could do it differently. Like, what if it's like the elves taking back Mirkwood or something like that? That could be interesting, and a base building game in that sort of way. But yeah, I think it's fun for what it is. I've had a great time with it, and probably going to move on to something else this week. So we shall see about that. I haven't really put too much thought in. Oh, I want to try out Unicorn Overlord. That's what I want to try out. So yeah. What about you, Spencer? Dope.
Yeah. For me, more Lies of P. I'm in this one area where there's a couple, like there's a really big boss and there's a couple mini bosses, and I've taken down the mini bosses multiple times now, because when you die, it's like if you spent your ergo, you can level up. But then like those bosses will respawn until you move to the next area. And you don't have to fight them. You could just, go for the main boss or whatever unlocks the next stage. But yeah, so I kind of took a break over the weekend, and I'm going to start diving back in and try to clear out this stage. But it does make me go, man, if Dragon's Dogma's combat felt as fun as Lies of P, but maybe with a little bit more of like a Skyrim creative kind of freedom, because sometimes with these games that are so combat heavy, you miss that like jankiness of, oh, I'll just go over here, hide behind a rock, and just like cheese it. Like if the boss battle is really intricate, it's like, no, he's like, I was literally just playing Dragon's Dogma, and this huge eagle thing came and picked me up into the air and then just like dropped me to the ground, and I died. And I'm like, okay, that is frustrating, because that means I have to pay attention, make sure I'm not in range. And then if I run out of health, I got to like run back to an area where I could go get health. Like, so I want Dragon's Dogma to like figure out a way to be Lies of P and to be Skyrim, where Skyrim always feels like if there's a will, there's a way. Like we can figure out a way to do this. Whereas like Lies of P is kind of like, okay, you're going to slowly understand the choreography. Pretty soon you're going to be pressing buttons and you're going to be dodging stuff that you just like, you can't believe you dodged that. So I'm hoping Dragon's Dogma 2 is a little blend of both of those combat styles, because Dragon's Dogma is difficult, because sometimes it'll be like, shoot the arrows at the wing of the eagle, and you're like shooting and you're like, is that doing anything? And then sometimes one of your pawns will give you fire, and then you'll shoot the fire, and then the eagle's like freaking out like on the ground. You're like, wow, I just did so much damage. But then you're like, but that's the first stage. You see these 3 little dots implying that you're going to have to beat him essentially 3 times. So you get stuck in these really massive boss battles that are kind of Skyrim adjacent, where it's like the boss just appears and you got to go. It's like when the dragon in Skyrim shows up, and if you're not in the right place, it's like, you got to survive this. But it's not quite like that, because I feel like I have more of my own bag of tricks with Skyrim. With Dragon's Dogma, when you do get caught into a battle, you do feel a little bit of that like Souls-like challenge, where you needed to be ready for it before it happened. Like you needed to know exactly how you were going to approach this. And that way it kind of reminds me of like Zelda, like Breath of the Wild, where it's like, if your fatigue is too low, if you don't have enough ingredients to eat, if you didn't level up your pawns when you were back at town, you should have done that. There's a lot of those kind of hard lessons to learn.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm glad I'm able to spend the time with Dragon's Dogma to understand those philosophies and those challenges. And those are the things that I think are still in Dragon's Dogma 2, where like there isn't fast travel, you could go long stretches between areas where you might get into some dicey combat, probably a lot of like crafting and figuring out, sometimes the quest marking can be difficult, where it's like, how am I going to find where this person is? I'm going to have to go to this really sketchy part of the map that I've never been to. So yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on Dragon's Dogma. I'll play more and watch more videos on Dragon's Dogma 2 and kind of prepare myself mentally for it.
Right.
But yeah, and then I wanted to shout out that I believe Diablo is coming in the next week or two to Game Pass. So I'll be excited to finish the story for Diablo finally on Xbox, because I really liked that campaign. I thought was really fun. I don't know if I'll do battle pass stuff. I'm usually not like an online gamer, but as far as just like single player, like having a fun game to play with,
it's
cool.
fun.
So I'm excited for that. Yeah.
I did get to play the demo for Sandlands, as well as the character creation for Dragon's Dogma. But Sandlands was sort of interesting in regards to, first, I like the animation style because it does remind me of manga, and it has a bit of that 2D style overlaid on top of 3D models, which is I always like that, like how they can retain the manga-esque look. But it is totally like a Mad Max kind of game where you are in, mostly when you're out. Well, let me explain the demo. The demo is kind of like a big sandbox in the desert, and they give you 3 vehicles. One is a mech, one is a tank, and one is like more of like a cyberpunk Mad Max motorcycle-ish. And they all have machine guns and, a different special, if you will. And then they gave me like some monsters, some dinosaurs or something to fight out there. And it was fun. It made me think like, okay, if this is where the fun is, what other vehicles are they going to offer me in the future or abilities on top of these vehicles that's going to elevate the combat? Because right now all I'm doing is holding R and I'm shooting, and then I'm spamming square to do the other attack or whatever. So at this moment, I don't know if I could say, yes, it's going to be a really fun game. It has an interesting idea right now, but I think if you're really into like that kind of Mad Max kind of world, this might be something worth looking into and trying out the demo for yourself. But that's what I will say in regards to the Sandlands demo today.
I love that. Yeah, I wanted to try it, but I couldn't find it on the Xbox console. So I'll have to go back onto their website and figure out how you're supposed to get to the demo. I'm sure it'll be easier to find maybe on like if it is on Switch or PlayStation or Steam or something. But yeah, for whatever reason, I couldn't find it. So I'm glad that you got to try it out because I was really curious about it. Yeah. And it is one of those games where like it could either be really, really cool, like Unicorn Overlord, or it could be kind of like middling and like something that, doesn't really sink its teeth into you. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on that one. But yeah, I think that's all for today. We have the Fallout show coming out next month, I believe. So maybe like 2 or 3 more weeks. So we'll see if they put out any more stuff. I'm excited. And I'm really curious to see what like non-Fallout, non-video game playing fans think when they like just see it as a new show. Like that'll be really exciting.
Right. Yes.
So yeah, let us know if you guys are going to watch the show and if you guys are excited for the show. And we will see you guys all next time. Later. Bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.